begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It is Ben and I, Chris, aka Starrapter, back for Outer Rim Transmission, episode 179. This is to review the latest episode of Skeleton Crew. And, well, we just basically lost an episode, so we are recording it again. This is going to be a very abbreviated episode because we basically spent the better part of 48 minutes without me realizing that the audio was off because of the sound mixer wasn't recording Ben speaking at all, apparently. So good old restart of the computer seemed to fix the problem. And, well, rather than just not have an episode this week, we're going to have a very abbreviated episode, as I'm fortunate enough to have Ben here to hang on for a little bit longer. Milton will be joining us again next week. Don't worry about that. We'll be back in the full team. But good to see you again, Ben, even though I was just talking to you for the last 47 minutes.
Oh, yeah. It's been a quite the evening. I mean, hey, kind of an abbreviated version of our week in Star Wars. You know, we're always seeing technical things happen in Star Wars, whether it be the Falcon or the Pod Racers or whatever it may be. I mean, this is kind of... This podcast sometimes is our version of the Millennium Falcon. It might just, needed a couple restarts and a couple hits to the hull, but eventually it'll work.
Oh, is this so true? Is this so true? I'll repeat what I said at the beginning of the last episode. Hey, we put up the Star Wars Christmas tree, had some cool ornaments I picked up from some conventions. So that's all very good. We watched a holiday Lego Star Wars special. I think that's going to be the usual now going forward. That was a lot of fun because it's about 45 minutes, and it takes me just about as long to set up all the Star Wars ornaments in a somewhat organized manner. So
oh yeah, it's always fun, getting those Christmas ornaments set up, and just going back to the good old days of collecting them. Like, whenever you see, like, to me, there's so many things that connect with Star Wars, outside of just the on-screen or of our like a normal things. We're always interacting with Star Wars, whether it be YouTube or social media. Like, for me, like, three things come to mind. It's always like Taco Bell connecting to Phantom Menace. It's Pizza Hut and Pizza Hut connected to that movie as well. And then, the Hallmark Christmas ornaments. Like, those are always, like, major things I go back to, like, as a kid, because it's like, those were just staples growing up in the late 90s, early 2000s. Like, we had one of those Hallmark Christmas stores around here before, and, one of the big things we always did when I was younger was go and get those different Hallmark ornaments. God, I have, like, a million different Boba Fett helmets, I feel like, or Stormtrooper helmets and Vaders. And, that was always one of the best memories as a kid, really, is getting those Christmas ornaments every year.
oh yeah, so it's that time of the year. What is your usual Star Wars holiday special thing you like to do? Let us know in the comment section down below. We only had one comic book released this week, and that was the ending to the second part of the Battle of Jakku, and that is the Battle of Jakku Republic Under Siege, issue number 4. I have my review for that on the YouTube channel. Go ahead and check that out. And if you aren't familiar with the YouTube channel, go over to youtube.com/Starrapter, because that's where you'll find our weekly podcast every Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern. And you can download us on any of your podcast streaming apps, Apple, Spotify. Go ahead, give us a review, a rate on any of these social media platforms to spread the knowledge, to spread the awareness of our good, positive Star Wars community here at Outer Rim Transmission. So, as a little bit truncated as we are tonight for doing a second attempt on this, we're going to get right into our discussion for Skeleton Crew Season 1, Episode 3, titled Very Interesting as An Astrogation Problem. I'm getting very good at talking about the title of this episode with how many times I've repeated it in the last hour now. So, first of all, I'll throw it over to you, Ben. What were your opening salvo thoughts on this episode?
Yeah, for me, I think the most charming and best thing about the best thing about this show, really, it continues with this episode. It's just like Star Wars being fun again. Like, every week, so we've only had a couple weeks so far, but I can just tell with the momentum of the show, the way it's building the story, just like the general vibes we're getting around the show. I don't always like to just do like a vibe check on the show, just because sometimes that's not really a thing. But like, you can like just scroll through social media, and it's generally positive, like probably 90% positive talk amongst fans. So it's just so nice getting that. And like one of the biggest tests every week when I watch all these Star Wars shows, I watch them with my one friend who's always listening, my friend Alex. You know, whenever he leaves, we always are always like, so are we excited for next week or are we not, basically? And every week he's like, oh man, can't wait to come back, because like, our firsthand experience with something like that back, when Boba Fett was coming on, got to a point where he was just like, I don't even think I'm going to bother coming over. I'll just watch the show at my house and text you or something. So like, it's just nice getting Star Wars, like, it's just fun again to talk about a Star Wars show. Like that's the most important thing with this. Like, sure, you have all the different connections and things, but I just think this is really feeling like a win for the fans. Like, it's not some big spectacle, like, with, big known characters or anything, but it just really feels like, we kind of said it, and even in our preview show leading up to this, if this show can just be like a solid B running throughout, like if they can be a solid 8 to 9 throughout the show, then we're good. That's a win. That's all we need. And like, it feels like it's heading in that direction, which is so refreshing.
Oh yeah, I mean it's great that we have your favorite, mine definitely, Andor. But then we have something as good on the other spectrum of Star Wars, which is Skeleton Crew. You were talking last week about the journey, right? The hero's journey. Joseph Campbell. That's his name, right?
Yep, Joseph Campbell.
Okay, Joseph Campbell, because I got it wrong last time. I didn't want to screw it up again this time. We got that journey, but we also have the Amblin adventure of it all. We have the E.T., the Goonies, and there's even more references, which I'll be happy to talk about later on in this little short discussion here tonight. But we get this show. So you have these two extremes. You have the really fun Star Wars at its heart, action adventure, and then you have like that hardcore rebellion story that's like a prestige HBO series that's on the same freaking streaming service. That's great. This is what we always wanted, to have this stratification of Star Wars stories, where it's like you could have your Mando stories over here, you could have your fun Skeleton Crew stories over here, and your other stories with Andor, and they're all valuable to the fans. Like, all these fans flock to different ones, or all of them, what doesn't matter, but they're all quality in the end for what they're trying to execute. I think what really works well is having a showrunner that is so laser focused on the start to finish. And what I'm so excited about with my opening thoughts here is the idea that sometimes you could have that premiere that is so good, and then the subsequent episodes are just like fine, and it just, you lose the steam, and then it picks it up in the finale. So far, third episode, yeah, we're not too far in the series, but we're already seeing like this episode for me hit on three main things, and that was phenomenal action and production, the character development, and even the side characters like KB really getting time to shine. And as far as the lore, building on the mystery of it all with what's happening with Adden, but providing even more tantalizing clues that go, ooh, Old Republic? Wait, what's going on here? So there's so many things that happened in this episode where it wasn't treading the wheels. It wasn't just, wait till next week, let's draw this out a little bit longer. I hate when shows just have the mystery to go on for 3 or 4 episodes without any payoff. I think there's a good amount of payoff here, but just as important is to keep us engaged and keep us talking on a week-to-week basis.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with all of those points. Like, the show's giving us enough answers, but it's also giving us enough questions as well. Like, it's giving us questions for us as like an audience, but also for like, us in terms of like the characters' eyes, like the kids' eyes of the show. Because like, you have the kids, like in this episode specifically, like, they're like doubting Jude Law or Jod, like being able to like, be a Jedi / use the Force, etc. So like, they're like, some of them are kind of skeptical. So it's just like, you have questions like that getting asked for like an audience, because that was a discussion, me and my friends, me and my cousins had, like, hey, is this guy actually a Force user? What is he, etc. And like, the characters are having that same discussion, and I'm glad I'm so happy. That's, in our first attempt at this podcast, I didn't even bring that up, but I'm so happy I remember that, because it's like, you know, um, the kids are like kind of skeptical of him, or some of the kids are kind of skeptical of him, which is cool because like that's kind of like the real life, they're kind of like the real life audience being like, no, this guy's just kind of scamming the little kids out of, him being a Jedi. Like, I like that they're kind of self-aware with that. You know what I mean? Like the way they made the show, they made it where like they're self-aware, because like they know us as an audience, we're sitting here going, is this guy really going to be a Force user, or is he just scamming these kids? And I'm glad they have the kids, like that's on their radar as well.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and we get a really cool character introduced called Kim, and she reminded me. I think her name is Oga. No, I'm thinking of Oga's Cantina. The crazy woman from the Dark Crystal movie that was like looking into the periscopes and the crazy stuff in observatory. It's like you have a character that's kind of kooky like her in this observatory. It could have only meant a Dark Crystal reference, and that was cool. And then from that reference, you spin off into the jewels of the Old Republic. And it's like it looked like there was like 9 planets. They all gone missing except for one, and that's Ad. I was like, oh, but they're also making a reference to like the Treasure Planet movie in a way, which is in a reference to Treasure Island from what I've heard. So there is a lot of deep cuts, a lot of cool things that are all interweaving to create its own original Star Wars story that really has a unique vibe that really feels different from things like we mentioned, Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan. This really feels a lot like the adventure. And I love how they put it on the poster, Ben. They said Star Wars adventure in the lead up to this show, and it couldn't be more on the nose with that, because it is just it's fantastic. And as far as the character of John Nana Wood, I do like the complexity of him. I do like how he's able to, first of all, I can't talk about the character without talking about the chemistry between all these kids and Jude Law. Just fantastic. The show wouldn't work if there was something off, but you really feel that warmth. But then you also like, well, this guy's a stranger though too, but he's like thinking about the kids like on a level that is not just like this mean dude just commanding them. And he gives me like Obi-Wan Kenobi vibes. He also gives me Kanan Jarrus vibes in a way, because he's just like that Jedi on the run. But is he a Jedi? He says he's not a Jedi. Again, and he has so many different like aliases. Like he introduces himself as Joe Nana Wood. But then the Ishitib, by the way, is played by the villain in Spider-Man. Did you know that?
Oh no, I didn't know
Doc
that.
Ock is doing the voice of Ishitib, Doc Ock from Spider-Man 2.
No wonder the voice is
Molina?
familiar.
Wait, what's his name? Something Molina?
Yeah, it's something like that.
Yeah, so we have a famous actor just brought on board to do. So basically, this guy is either known as Crimson Jack, John Nana Wood, and then you also have, Captain Silvo. So you have this guy that you don't know what's going on. He's got these kids. The one lady, Kim, thinks he's kidnapping them, calls the New Republic police, and they're called the Rangers of the New Republic, which I thought was pretty cool. And that is our first look of, okay, this is connected. Up until now, things have been on their own, but now we know they're in the territory. The New Republic is around. We know that from the crawl that they gave last week. But to see it now, it's like, okay, we can start putting these pieces together. So there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I really like to see how they're connecting it like that, just because it's like, that's something people forget about this show. They went into it, even like we were kind of like talking about it being kind of like an isolated show, and like a lot of folks didn't really like dive into like how could it be connected or whatever. Even me personally, I was skeptical because like a year ago, it sounded like the show was supposed to come out a year ago, then it gets pushed a year, and it's like, well, if it's getting pushed a year, that means it doesn't matter, because it doesn't matter in the order of when it comes out. But now that it's came out, it's like, oh wait, it's cool, like it's like this, it's its own isolated show, but it's slowly starting to connect to the Mandoverse. You know, like you said, we see the Rangers of the New Republic at the end, and it's just it's cool seeing that connection, that just that little bit of connection. And I think they're going to slowly seed more and more into this series. Like, I feel like we'll probably see those X-wing pilots again, and you know, it'll be more and more connected by the end of it. And it just begs the question of, like, if it is, then, like, with Jude Law being a Force user, potentially, like, you know, maybe he eventually runs into Luke or characters like that. So it's just it's an interesting path they're going to be taking with this show, because you have this main adventure, but then you have, it's like not even a C plot or D plot. It's like an E plot, or even like a K or L. Like, it's way down the line plot. Like, maybe long term, like, it's just going to build into something really nice into the Mandoverse.
Oh yeah, so we got that going on. I want to talk about the action. I thought the action was probably the best action, honestly, we've seen yet. From a production standpoint, from a dialogue and excitement standpoint. I mean, going to the beginning of them sneaking out of that prison with Jod just using like the mind trick or whatever he was doing, just using the Force in like little tricky ways, which was really fun. And then them getting on the Onyx Cinder. I'm going to commit that to memory now. I'm learning my lessons from the Mist episode we recorded. We were spent like 30 seconds ago. What was the ship called? The Onyx Cinder chase was really cool. The first one where they're getting out, and it's just Star Wars hijinks where it's kind of like Han Solo all over again, where it's like, oh, you know, they're tied to the fuel rods and the fuel tubes, and they're trying to get out of there, and they're getting stuck, and it's, oh wait, we have to go back for the droid. Why do you go back for the droid? Why is the droid so important? You know, all this funny stuff. Well, he saved our lives. Like, all this great Star Wars banter. And comedy, because then they're pulling all the other ships like towards them as they're doing this, and he's coming back, and it's just chaos. I absolutely love that. And then you look at what they do at the end of the episode, and you have Jod piloting the Onyx Cinder with the X-wings using their ion cannons because they don't want to kill it because they know the kids are on board, and then the kids are in the turrets like firing back at the X-wings, and then Jod's like, his thrusters are hitting the surface of the moon, causing the dust to get in and mess up their vision as they jump to hyperspace. Like, there is really good action pieces in this episode, better than half the movies I've seen in the last 6 months, I gotta say.
Oh yeah, I really liked the action pieces a lot. I thought they were done really well. And I think that's the nice thing about this series, is the fact that it doesn't feel as claustrophobic as some of the stuff we've gotten, because, like, you know, the volume has been really good for what it has, but then, you know, when they pushed it to its limits, that's when you can kind of see kind of like the breaking points of it. And it's nice that the way they've shot this show and made this show, you know, it feels like a nice, good production, and it feels appropriate for the way they shot it, and the way they just like the cinematography of it all. It doesn't feel like they're pushing the boundaries too far. Like, for me, Kenobi felt claustrophobic at points. Like, you know, I feel like you could almost see the volume at some points of the show. And like this, and you know, that's kind of like, you know, they're pushing the boundaries of what that technology can do. And like this show, it feels like they know, like, you know, it just feels like they're on point with the cinematography and stuff, and it looks really nice, and it really well produced.
Oh yeah, recently I've heard rumblings that Ahsoka season 2 is moving their production somewhere else.
Yep.
So that's going to be a really big benefit, because they could still use volume, but I think that's where the sweet spot has been. Is some shows have used this already, where like they do some stuff on the volume, but then some stuff on location on a soundstage with like you know, actual stuff in the background. Like, I think they've been learning, because it's been happening. You know, this is the 5th year that they're using this volume, so it's only going to get better, right? It's only going to improve if they're learning their lessons, when they've been hearing the feedback from the fans. As much as it's a good thing, sometimes we call them out on it. So as long as it's looking like Skeleton Crew, I think it's going to be great.
Yeah. I mean, the way this show is going, like, it's hitting all cylinders. Like it feels like they really do know the limits of what they can do and can't do with this show. Like that's the nice part about it. I feel like I don't like to just throw Kenobi under the bus, but it feels like Kenobi. They were trying to make this galactic level show with the volume, which was very restrictive for what they were trying to do. Versus like, just imagine if you have the Kenobi story being told with just the way they're shooting Skeleton Crew, being a little more aware of the limitations and things. Like I really think that's where like John Watts and everybody's hitting it off really well. Is like they just know, really how how to like shoot these and block these scenes and everything. And I'm really liking how they're doing it. And that's just it's paying off for like the way the show looks, the way the show feels, the way the action is, but also like the way the characters are like interacting and like getting to interact with the environment. And like I think the show's really benefiting from that, because it feels like we're getting back to just with the way the story's going and everything, but in the way it's shot, like it feels like we're getting back to the basics of Star Wars, like of A New Hope. It feels like we're kind of back to the basics of things.
Yeah, it certainly does. We have Drunk 3PO in the chat saying they should have had more Star Wars shows like this made for Disney Plus. No need for legacy characters. Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at the success for Mandalorian Season 1. There was like no known characters. It wasn't really until Season 2 that they started bringing like the cameo a week, everything, which was working for the story. It wasn't like they were just like useless. Like those characters were meaningful in the overall story. But then after a while, it's like you go to Book of Boba Fett, then you have Obi-Wan Kenobi, like the list goes on, right? Like that is part of the charm of a Star Wars story like Skeleton Crew is giving that 2-episode premiere enough time to get introduced to brand new characters. It allows you to be more creative in your approach because you don't know the fates of these kids. You don't know what's going to happen to them, where they're going to end up. There is no hard stopping point where they need to be or what their characters are based on books or comics or anything. As much as I love canon, like these are blank canvases, so you could actually get away with more things. So yeah, I agree. I think if anything, like I'm very curious to know what the ratings are for the show, not from like a score like Rotten Tomato thing, but like how many people are watching it, because I really think it would be in Disney's best interest rather, to go ahead and greenlight a second season, because from what all the chatter I've seen like no negativity. Everybody's like really high up on this. I was talking to somebody at work today that absolutely loves the show, and he's a Gen Xer. He's like in his 40s. He's like, "Oh, this show is great." I was like, "Yeah, man." It's like, this is all that nostalgia, the 80s stuff that you love, and it's in this awesome Star Wars package.
Yep. Well, see, that's the big thing I think with Star Wars fans is with a show like Kenobi. Gosh, I keep going back to that, and I'm sorry for anybody if you love Kenobi, but a show like Kenobi, it has all the pressure in the world on it to be everything we've ever wanted and more, because it's Obi-Wan Kenobi. We want it to be that awesome General Obi-Wan, we thought of from Revenge of the Sith. And like, it's all the weight of the world on a show like that. And then a show like this, it's like you said, it's a blank canvas. You don't know anything about the kids, Jude Law, nothing. Like, you don't know any of the characters at all. Even the Rangers pilots that show up, it's not even Carson Teva. We don't know any of these characters. So like it's nice seeing that. And like you said, there's not really much negative fan chatter. Like, me personally, I've been negative on a lot of not negative in a I've been negative in just terms of a strict critic way. I think there's been a lot of misses on projects lately more than hits. And even from other folks that have been more critical of Star Wars as well, like Star Wars Theory. Not like Star Wars Theory, for example. He's had his issues with Star Wars, but like he's enjoyed this show, and one of the big points he's brought up about that is like it's not stepping on the toes of any big characters like Obi-Wan or Boba Fett. It's just a brand new, fresh slate story. And, like you said, like, even Theory was kind of alluding to it like you did, Chris. Like, this is a blank slate of characters, so it's like the fate of the galaxy isn't riding on this, because it's not like, we're changing Luke Skywalker's character. It's like, it's a totally new group of characters. So, it's nice just getting that, because, like, now when you have, when you have folks when they, would have been more analytical, like myself, like when you watch like a show like Boba or Obi-Wan or whatever, Acolyte, for example, with Kiadi-Mundi and Plagueis and everybody, like, when you have those characters, when you're getting the legacy characters involved, you're putting the weight of the franchise on that show. Like, it's like, this show must be a 10 out of 10.
Yep.
Or it's gonna be a 0 out of 10. There's no in between. So it's just like, it's so nice that this show just has a fresh slate and people can go into it with an open mind versus like any expectations.
Oh yeah. Well, as much as I want to go on for another hour like we did before, I think we're gonna call it here, bringing us into just about 30 minutes of time. But I will give my score, and I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10, which matches, I think, my score last week. I liked it a lot. I'm still waiting for that episode to knock it completely out of the park. We have the Daniels that were responsible for the Oscar picture of the year in Everything Everywhere All at Once with Michelle Yeoh. So yeah, we have them. We have Bryce Dallas Howard on deck. We have so many other fantastic directors along the lines of these other directors that have been amazing so far. It was John Watts and Chowdhury something. Gosh,
David Lowery.
There we go. So far, so good. Awesome action. Great character development with this new introduction of John Nana Wood. Lots of mystery, lots of really cool lore bits, digging into speaking the words of the Old Republic. Oh my goodness, that's awesome to hear all the time. Yeah, what is your score going to be?
Yeah, for me, I have to agree with you on all those points. Like, I think the show's been a lot of fun. It's nice, like, that Star Wars is heading in a good direction. Like, it's good, positive chatter across the fan base. No matter what parts of the internet really you see, I always think with Star Wars shows, if at minimum it's neutral, then we're in a good territory. Like, this show is neutral to positive at worst. So it's nice the show's heading that direction. And for me, I have to agree with you. I have to give the show I have to give the episode an 8.5, just because I think it really hit on a lot of those good points. It answered questions we've been wondering, but it also opened questions up for us as well to head into the next week and the coming weeks ahead for both us as an audience, but the characters as well. So I just think overall the show's doing a really good job. And, hey, as long as we continue hovering in that like 8+ range for a show, we're good. We're really good. And so yeah, for me, I have to give it an 8.5.
And there we go. So thanks for everybody for listening, for watching. Again, we appreciate you all being on here, talking Star Wars. Next week, I'll have this thing locked down. We'll be starting at our usual time of 7 p.m. Eastern without any audio problems here at all. So go ahead. As I mentioned, you can find us here, youtube.com/Starrapter, and you can find us wherever podcasts are found. Simply search on Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, whatever place you look for your podcast, or search Outer Rim Transmission. We'll be back with a full show next week, along with our buddy Milton, for the three of us talking about episode 4. Can you believe we'll already be at the midpoint? Episode 4 of the podcast. So where can people find you, Ben?
Yeah, you can find me on X and Instagram at Real Ben Maynard. I'm always talking about football, fitness, or Star Wars. Those are pretty much the only 3 things I talk about, basically. Or DC. There's a lot of speculation. We might get a Superman trailer this week, so stay tuned. But yeah, those are the things I'll be talking about on my social platforms. And you can find Milton over on X at MiltonWeber7, and then he's really active on his Instagram, always posting like his fitness stuff or recipes and those types of things at Milton7Weber.
There you go. You can find me over on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel. Me and Matthew Neugebauer will be back for our weekly Tractor Beam. Took a break this week. We'll be back. Oh my goodness, guys. I think we're going to be breaking down like 5 comics, like legit, like between stuff we missed and like Dark Horse is putting out 3 comics on the same day, which is just absurd, along with Marvel. So it's going to be a long show. So strap in for Wednesday at 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern over on the Star Wars Underworld channel. On Wednesday, we'll be going for a while talking about the latest and greatest in the Star Wars comics. But until then, for Ben, for Milton, who couldn't be here tonight, for Chris, aka Starrapter, barring any technical audio issues, we're happy you joined us here tonight. We'll see you next week. And that's going to do it for us. May the Force be with you always. End transmission.